I was born into a Catholic family. Grew up Catholic. Had strong Italian grandparents, and it was important that we went to Catholic church, me and my brothers. I remember first communions. I don't remember baptism because, baptism, in the Catholic Church, it's more for the parents than it is for the person that's being baptized, is what I've grown to understand. But I was baptized. I remember taking my first communion, going to communion classes, and then, maybe a decade-ish later, started going to confirmation classes. And it was actually during those confirmation classes, I was either 18 or 19, and starting to, like, the skeptic in me started to really grow, and kind of dwarf the whatever believer there was, and disagreed with a lot of what the Catholic Church wanted you to believe, and ended up leaving in my late teens, early 20s, somewhere in there, and ultimately, essentially, was an atheist for about 2.5 decades. 2 decades. We'll fast forward to I was 39. And Pokemon Go came out in 2016. It changed the world. People were playing Pokemon Go on an insane level. A lot of people will make the joke that the week that Pokemon Go came out is the closest we'll ever get to world peace, which is everybody out looking for Pikachus, and I really gravitated toward the game. I'd never even played a main series Pokemon Go game. Never even owned a Game Boy. So this was my first foray into it, really enjoyed it. And I was downtown playing 5 nights a week. And it was, not uncommon to, meet up with new people and make new friends, and all people enjoying the same game. It was all walks of life, all demographics, ages, genders, races. Everybody just wanted to catch them all. And then one night in November, I was assaulted. I was beaten very badly. I was beaten so badly that the friend of mine that discovered me when he got off work at a bar on Trade Street, he found me. He was just going to play Pokemon Go himself in his car, driving around, but his headlights caught me. He got out and wanted to figure out what was going on, but he saw blood. My face was covered in blood. I was beaten so badly he didn't recognize me. This is a kid I've known. I say kid, but I've known him since we were kids. I've known him since the late 90s. We used to play video games at the Aladdin's Castle at Haynes Mall back when that was a thing. I'd known him for, what's that? 2.5 decades, something like that. Yeah. And he didn't recognize me. I was beaten so bad. But apparently it was cold enough that my blood really wasn't being lost as quickly as it could have. When he called 911 and the ambulance got there, they were able to get me to the hospital. Science did what science does. Doctors did what doctors do. And I started to recover in 2017. I was literally in the hospital until Christmas Eve. but suffered from a lot of atrophy, and had to rebuild from scratch. Started off in a wheelchair, and upgraded to a walker, upgraded to a cane, and now I can walk unassisted. I don't have the best balance. My equilibrium's still a little off at times, but I'm doing pretty good. And things got really bad in 2020. I know that's like the most obvious of obvious statements. Things were bad in 2020 for a lot of people, but it's when, it's when COVID really happened, lockdowns and everything. But take me, I'm suffering from PTSD, I'm suffering from depression, things got really bad. I got suicidal. And didn't do it, obviously. Got real close, but I felt like, really just had the dichotomic argument between the bad angel on one shoulder and the good angel on the other shoulder, convincing me that so many people would be disappointed if I wasn't here anymore. So that one won out, and I ended up losing my apartment. I was evicted, but I ended up moving to a friend's house on Maplewood, walking distance from here, which is key. And would walk around and play Pokemon Go in the area, Hanestown. I ended up getting a job at the Walmart right down the street, and would walk around, play Pokemon Go before and after work, and was walking around this church, Haynes United Methodist, because it is a Pokemon gym. And there's a lot of stuff you can do at Pokemon gyms, in the game. So I was doing that while Redemption Hill staff was working on renovating it. And, I kept seeing them and they kept seeing me, and I just didn't want to be that creepy, weird-haired guy walking around, so I introduced myself, just to let them know that, I don't mean any harm, I'm just walking around playing Pokemon Go, and they were super friendly, and super welcoming, and invited me to the open house, which was in September. And from the open house, I, was about 99% sure that I was going to come to the first service. And then I had a really good moment the night before that first service, because it's at 9 o'clock and I have to be at work at 11. So I would have to get up much earlier than I normally would have just to walk to church. And I just didn't know if I had it in me to actually do that, but I had a really good experience with, I was on a lunch break, from the Walmart. I went up to the Starbucks, and I ran into Charles Fernandez. He had seen me up here, but we never really introduced ourselves. But he told me, he wanted to, find out about me. And we talked, and found out that he was also a former Catholic, and he invited me to come to the church the next day. And I told him I was like 90%, maybe I was 99% at that point. But seeing him, knowing he wanted me here, knowing his story, relating it to my story, I kind of clicked over to that 100%. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get up at 8 in the morning, grab a shower, walk to church. And I did, and I took a picture of myself listening to the worship music. I tweeted it, and I said, I walked into a church for the first time in over 20 years. I didn't burst into flame, so that's positive. Yeah, things have continued to get better. I've, enjoyed hearing the messages. I love hearing the worship music. Jeremy, Ashley, everybody up here just knocks it out of the park on a weekly basis. And it really, it's kind of like the cherry on top. The messages are great. I started, first service was Mark 1:1. And I've attended every service that I can. And if I haven't physically been here, I've listened to the services on the YouTube live stream. And in fact, one of the big services that I remember listening to while pushing carts at work, because I ended up being in maintenance pushing carts, it was the New Year's Day service, which Taylor was the speaker that day. He really, listening to him really made me believe that God has a plan. And for everything happens for a reason, which always used to be like kind of cliche things to me. But at the same time, I'd been going to doctors and therapists finding out, and they would want to tell me that when I was assaulted, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's a freak accident. Things like that don't really happen to people in Winston-Salem. It could have been a transient, person, just because it was so close to the bus station. But there was never any arrests. There's no case. It was just one of those freak things, wrong place, wrong time. But as the months go by, I'm really starting to feel like it's I was in the right place at the right time, because God put me there. And even though I worked a good job, had a good apartment, had a good life, good friends, it kind of needed to be taken away from me. And I needed to be humbled and kind of knocked down a few pegs, kind of hit my rock bottom, so that I could start crawling back up. And the people at Redemption Hill have been so helpful, so supportive, helping me to move, helping me to get a vehicle, and just support week after week after week. Also mentioned that it was Easter, the Easter service that I attended, and I'd heard all those words before. I'd heard the scriptures before. I heard the story. I'm very familiar with the story. But something about that service on that day, in that moment, it kind of clicked for me. It really clicked for me that God sent his only son to die for us, to die for me. And he's up there taking care of stuff, and he's put me on a weird path, but I'm just putting one foot in front of the other, trying to end up a little bit further along than when I started. And I've been going to different small groups, and it's been, God put these people in my life. God put this church here. And now I'm ready to be baptized by my choice, for me. I thought that since I started going to this church on Mark 1:1, that it would be good to bookend that with the last service of Mark. I brought that idea up to I think Melanie at first, and she thought it sounded like a great idea. And I talked to Brandon, and he agreed. So that's where we're at now, and I'm leaving out some details, but this has to be this can't be too long. But I mean, I as a Catholic, as someone who took communion every Sunday as kind of part of the ritual, I was even an altar boy. I was on the altar, ringing the bells, washing the priest's hands, through the whole ritual of it. So I didn't know when I should take communion here, or if it should be after my baptism here. But there was a really good service a couple of weeks ago now, where Brandon was reading about the Last Supper in Mark, and that touched me and affected me, and it felt like that was the day I should take communion. So I did, and I've been feeling like it's a nourishment every week since. So that's been great. And even though today is the end of Mark, that doesn't mean it has to be the end of me coming to church. I'm looking forward to what the future holds, learning more about the Word, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, as part of this fellowship, part of this family. And I hope that anyone else that's here wants to be a part of that too.